The word equality used to mean something simple. It meant that if I do something, I face the results, and if you do something, you face the results. Same rules, same risk. That's what fairness actually looks like. But that's not what it means today. Now, the word equality is a disguise. It's used like a moral shield to dodge accountability. It means I can do what you do, but you can't say what you'd say if I do it. That's not equality, that's immunity. I mean, you see it everywhere. If a man raises his voice, he's aggressive. If a woman raises her voice, she's being strong. If a man sets a boundary, he's controlling. If a woman sets one, though, she's protecting her peace, right? And if a man leaves a toxic relationship, he is cold and he's heartless. But if a woman does it, if she leaves, she's empowered and healing, right? That's not equality. That's two different sets of rules running under the same slogan. And the more you point it out, the more you're told that you're the problem for just noticing it. And this isn't about men versus women. It's about truth versus narratives, because the truth is a lot of people don't want equality anymore. They want freedom from consequences. They want the ability to accuse, to manipulate, to control perception, and to never be held to the same standard that they use on everyone else. That is not empowerment. That's moral insulation. And it's being packaged as virtue. Men are constantly told to open up and to be honest and to be vulnerable. But when they finally do that, when they're finally honest and open and vulnerable, that honesty becomes ammunition later. It's used to attack their character. And they're told to constantly to respect women's boundaries. But God forbid they create their own, they're called cold and distant and emotionally unavailable. Men live under a double standard that constantly moves, constantly. He doesn't know what version of the rules will apply that day. He knows that one wrong word in a text can get screenshotted and twisted into intent. And he knows that one emotional reaction can be clipped and cropped and posted as proof. And he knows that if he defends himself, he will be called aggressive, right? Defending himself will be called aggression. I mean, that is not freedom. It's just managed speech. I mean, that's men living like defendants in conversations that never had neutral ground in the first place. And the problem isn't just cultural, it's systemic. Social media, it rewards accusations. It rewards the outrage. I mean, the more extreme your story sounds, the more attention you get. So the incentive to me is pretty clear. Make yourself a victim, because the victims always win the audience. Always. It's not about justice anymore. It's about leverage. If a woman claims she was hurt, well, by God, she's believed instantly. If a man says he was lied about, he's questioned instantly. That's how the modern moral market works. Sympathy buys status, and men can't afford it. And I don't say this with anger. I say this with precision, because what's being sold as equality today it's a selective standard that only runs one way, right? If a woman cheats, it's because she was emotionally unfulfilled. If a man cheats, it's because he's a narcissist, right? If she lies, it's because she was hurt. And if he lies, it's because he's manipulative. It's the same act, two verdicts. It's not fairness. That is narrative control, okay? And the men pointing this out, like myself, we're not bitter, we're just observant. We just notice things. They've stopped pretending not to notice the imbalance. They've realized that silence doesn't bring peace. It just breeds quiet resentment. And resentment eventually kills respect. Real equality means if you cause damage, you answer for it. That's what real equality is. It's so simple. You don't get a free pass because you cried or because the audience likes you better. You don't get immunity because you framed yourself as healing. The truth doesn't disappear because you tell it with tears. Okay? I mean, that's the problem now. Truth is treated as a form of cruelty when it lands on women. Accountability is framed as misogyny, and holding women to the same standard that men are held to is now. It's just that, yeah, you're that's just pointing out the truth. You're called a misogynist just by holding up a mirror. I mean, you can see it in schools and workplaces and courtrooms. In schools, boys are punished harder for the same exact behavior because boys should know better, right? Or even in the workplace, calling out a woman's unprofessional conduct is hostile. And in courtrooms, a mother's actions are explained away and a father's actions are judged. We've built a system where protecting women's feelings ranks higher than protecting truth. And that's the part that no one wants to say. Women are not being strengthened by this. They're being softened. Because when the world bends around your feelings, you never build the muscle to face resistance. You start confusing discomfort with oppression. And in any form of feedback, you start calling that abuse. And eventually you stop knowing who you actually are because your entire identity is built around being right, not being real. Ladies, that's not empowering, okay? It's not. And the irony is that the women who play that game end up miserable because you can't be happy if no one's allowed to be honest with you. True, you cannot. You can win every argument, sure, and you can still feel completely unseen though. And you could be worshipped online and still feel unloved offline. Because people don't trust someone who can't be questioned. They just agree with you to avoid chaos, not because they believe you. That's not connection, okay? That's just compliance. It's just compliance. Men already know women are capable, okay? That's not the issue. The issue is when a woman can harm a man emotionally, legally, or socially and still claim victimhood if he defends himself. That is the setup that we live in. I can insult you, but if you respond, you're emotionally unsafe, right? I can humiliate you in public, but if you tell your side, you're attacking me. That's not equality. That's not equality. Like I said, that's immunity, dressed up as empathy. And immunity always rots from the inside because the person who's never held accountable becomes less trustworthy and less grounded and less self-aware over time. They lose credibility with everyone except the people who fear them. And men understand that pattern because they've been on the receiving end of it for years. Years. They've been taught that the only safe position is silence. To say nothing and react to nothing, to absorb it and just move on. It's always been the safe bet, but silence doesn't build peace, it builds distance. In distance, it eventually turns into withdrawal. Men start, just like they are, men start walking away from relationships, from dating, from family systems that treat them like background villains in someone else's redemption arc. They're not walking away from women. They're walking away from the asymmetry, from being the ones expected to take accountability while being told that it's hateful to expect it from the other side. And that's the difference between men's exhaustion and bitterness. Bitterness is when you still want to be understood. Exhaustion is when you've accepted that you never will be. That's where most men are. Because equality doesn't mean sameness, it means fairness. And fairness requires honesty on both sides. If one side gets to redefine every single argument and rewrite every motive and switch between victim and hero depending on what wins the moment, then equality never existed. That's just that like I said, that's just control through guilt. You can't build love on fear. And right now most men live in fear, not of women, but of misrepresentation. They know that one moment taken out of context can destroy their reputation in their career or their access to their children. And that fear doesn't come from paranoia. It comes from watching it happen to other men who spoke up and got destroyed for it. They don't want equality. They want power to act without the consequences that men have to carry every single day. If a man breaks down, he's unstable. But if a woman does it, she's brave. If a man protects himself, he's defensive. If a woman protects herself, she's setting boundaries, right? If a man questions a false claim, he's intimidating. If a woman lies, it's trauma response. That's not equality. That's not equality, man. That's manipulation. Just dressed up as emotional intelligence, right? And the message that men have been forced to swallow is this: if you defend yourself, you prove her point. That's the trap. No matter what you do, you lose. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But here's what's changing. Men are done explaining themselves to people who never intended to understand them. They're finished. They're finished apologizing for existing inside a system that treats their restraint as guilt. They're done. They're done letting shame dictate their self-worth. You can see it happening quietly. Men aren't arguing online anymore. They're not fighting to be heard. They're simply leaving. Okay, they're bailing on dating apps. They're bailing these one-sided conversations, and they're leaving these systems that reward dishonesty and punish integrity. Because here's the truth: you can't just run a relationship, a business, or a society on selective accountability. If one person can break promises and the other person is told to be understanding, you don't have peace, you have control. If one person can lie and the other person is told don't escalate, you don't have harmony, you have fear. That's the modern dynamic. People using safety language to disguise power plays. And it's collapsing, slowly, but inevitably. When truth becomes dangerous to say, lies become profitable to repeat. That's where we are right now. You can't build trust with someone who gets to define both the offense and the punishment. You can't build a healthy culture when one group gets to hurt people and then hide behind the word healing. Because healing has become a performance now, a way to avoid accountability while pretending to grow. Real healing includes taking ownership for the pain you've caused. It means I did that. That was me. That was wrong. That's what that means. And without that, healing is just branding your dysfunction. And that's what modern empowerment often is, a marketing campaign for irresponsibility. It's not about building strong women. It's about building uncriticizable ones. Because if no one can correct you, you never change. And if you never change, you just keep cycling through new victims and new relationships and new excuses and just calling it growth. It's not strength, it's not growth, that's arrested development. Men aren't mad because women are strong. They're frustrated because strength now means never being questioned. And the men who try to have an honest conversation about it are labeled dangerous, controlling, or bitter. Meanwhile, the women are openly mocking men online constantly. And they're called brave for it. That's so brave. I mean, that's the double standard everyone sees. But a lot of people don't want to admit to that. Women bully men online all the time with their words. And these women just start backing each other up, tearing men apart. Start asking, well, what was your relationship like with your mother? Assuming that you had a bad one, right? We've all heard that. But it's created a generation of men who would rather just walk away than argue. I mean, they don't raise their voice, they don't fight back, they just shut down and disappear. Because they've learned that one accusation can cost them everything, even if it isn't true. And they're not walking away because they hate women. They're walking away because they've realized there's no winning in a conversation that starts with guilt. You can't reason with someone who's invested in seeing you as the villain. And here's the cruel irony. When good men pull back, society collapses quietly. And then women have the gall to ask, where'd all the good men go? Jeez. But yeah, these good men, they stop mentoring, they stop protecting, they stop engaging because they've seen what happens when they step up. They're told to sit down. They're told that they're the problem. And then everyone wonders why fewer men want to get married, raise families, or even participate in systems that punish them for doing exactly that. There's no apathy in that. It's self-defense. You can only get accused so many times before you stop showing up. But here's the thing, immunity, it doesn't last forever. Eventually, everyone wants someone to be accountable for something. And when the people who were always protected finally face the consequences they've avoided, they crumble. They crumble. Because you can't spend your whole life being shielded from responsibility and then suddenly know how to handle it. It's like never being allowed to lose as a kid. You grow up thinking that every loss is oppression instead of education. That's where much of modern culture is, a group of people who mistake accountability for abuse, who think that honesty is hostility and that boundaries are control unless they set them. And the result is what you see today. Utter chaos. That they like to label it as compassion, right? But let's be clear, true equality isn't a threat to anyone. It's fairness. It's shared responsibility. It's saying we both live by the same rules. But what's being pushed now isn't equality, dude. It's exemption. It's a demand for one side to be praised for doing what the other is punished for. It's not about partnership. It's about control of the moral narrative. That's how men are portrayed now. In shows, in commercials, and in classrooms. The joke is always at their expense. The man is the problem, the lesson, the fool. He exists to be corrected, not respected. People wonder why men have stopped trying to please anyone. If you're constantly told that you're wrong for existing the way you are, you eventually just stop participating. But here's the part that should worry everyone. Women aren't winning in this setup either. When men withdraw, women, they lose what they claim they want, which is honesty, strength, and partnership. Because you can't have connection without risk. And you can't have safety without trust. And if you can't have trust in a system where accountability only flows one direction, you can't have trust in a system where accountability only flows in one direction. That's why so many modern relationships feel so hollow. Everyone's afraid. He's afraid of being accused. She's afraid of being alone. Neither of them feel safe enough to tell the truth, so they live in performance mode. They post the highlight reel while their actual connection decays behind the scenes. That's what happens when immunity replaces honesty. People become actors in their own lives. And deep down, everyone knows it. Men know they're being managed, and women know they're not being respected. And instead of fixing it, both sides just keep pretending. But pretending doesn't create peace. It just delays collapse. Every society that has ever collapsed started by protecting their feelings over truth. Every failed relationship dies when one person stops being honest out of fear. It's not politics, it's human nature. Truth is the foundation of every structure that lasts. And the second that you make truth illegal, everything built on top of that rots. That's where we are. You can't say the truth about relationships without being labeled bitter. You can't notice the truth and say the truth about fatherhood without being labeled, as controlling. And you can't say the truth about women without being labeled a misogynist. And when those labels become weapons, you don't get progress. You just get what we have today. And you get silence. But silence isn't peace. It's paralysis. Men aren't trying to win arguments anymore. They're trying to survive them. And here's the thing. When men stop speaking, they stop caring. And when they stop caring, they stop contributing. That's the real cost of immunity. It kills incentive. If you punish men for doing the right thing, eventually they stop doing anything at all. You can't have a civilization on selective accountability. You can't build families when truth is negotiable. You sure as heck can't build love when one side's emotions are law and the other side's are evidence. This isn't about hatred or revenge. It's about balance. It's about calling things what they are again. Equality means the same rules apply to everyone. Immunity means they don't. And we've been told for years that questioning that difference makes you hateful. But in reality, refusing to question it is what keeps everyone stuck. If you actually want equality, you say, judge me by the same standard I judge others. You don't hide behind identity. You don't weaponize emotion. You don't rewrite history. You stand on truth, even when it hurts. Because only people who can handle being wrong ever become trustworthy. And that's what men want. Trust that isn't conditional. Rules that don't change mid-conversation. Accountability that cuts both ways. That is real equality. Everything else, all the buzzwords, all the hashtags, all the corporate slogans are distractions. They're masks that hide a refusal to be accountable. But that era is ending. Men aren't angry anymore. They're focused. They've realized that the only way to win a rigged game is to stop playing it. They're building new lives that don't depend on the approval of people who weaponize morality. They don't explain themselves to people who refuse to listen. They're done apologizing for noticing double standards, and they're done asking for permission to tell the truth. Silence isn't surrendering, it's just observation. Men are paying attention to who lies, who manipulates, and who owns their mistakes. They're sorting the world quietly, just watching who they can build with and who they should avoid. Because when you see how the game works, you stop trying to change the rules. You just walk away. And when enough men walk away from one-sided systems, those systems, they just fall apart. They can't survive without male participation or protection or production, any of those things. And when that happens, accountability comes back by force, not by policy. Because reality doesn't negotiate. It always comes back around. You can run from fairness for a while, but not forever. Eventually, everyone pays their tab. And that's what's coming, a return to balance. Not because people suddenly became virtuous or anything, but because lies eventually stop working. People stop buying them. They stop rewarding them. They stop staying silent. And when that happens, equality will return. Not as a movement, but as a necessity, because the truth always finds its way back. You can censor it and distort it and punish it, but you can't kill it. And when it returns, it exposes everything built on deception, everything. That's why they fear it, because that's why they call it hate, because once the truth is free again, immunity dies. And when immunity dies, accountability lives again. That's what this has all been about from the start. Not hate, not control, not revenge, just accountability. Because without accountability, love dies, respect dies, and everything that mattered between men and women dies with it. Like I said, they don't want equality, they want immunity. But immunity always ends the same way, alone. Because when you protect yourself from consequences, you also protect yourself from connection. And in the end, all that's left is you, safe, untouched, and completely unknown. That's not liberation. That is loneliness with good PR. And that's the truth they can't silence forever.